Hello, thanks for joining us today. I'm Chris Collins with the City's Development Services Department. I'm here to talk to you about the Tree Canopy Preservation and Enhancement Ordinance amendments that were recently passed by the Asheville City Council on September 8th of this year. First off, why did we need a Tree Canopy Preservation Ordinance? Well, we are looking to implement several goals of the Comprehensive Plan, Living Asheville, to slow and reverse tree canopy loss, to equate tree canopy production to canopy lost by development activity, and to create a positive change in land surface temperature and urban heat issues. This action is supported by several studies, such as the NASA-developed land surface temperature study that was recently conducted, the Urban Tree Canopy Study, which measured and quantified our current trends in tree canopy and tree canopy loss in Asheville, and by the Comprehensive Plan, Living Asheville. It supports several goals directly that are contained within this plan. During this process of developing this ordinance, the city is engaged with many stakeholders, including the Urban Forestry Commission, Development Customer Advisory Group, and that's a group of developers and designers and contractors that work directly with development services, the City's Sustainability Committee, Planning and Economic Development Committee, the Downtown Commission, the Chamber of Commerce, and we've held a public webinar with the assistance of Greenworks. First, let's talk about what this ordinance applies to, and then in a few minutes we'll take you through the nuts and bolts of how it works. One of the first things this ordinance applies to is subdivisions of land, and that is, for example, when someone has one larger lot and they apply to break that into smaller pieces. In this example, you see one lot went to 5. When that action is taken, an area will need to be designated for tree protection. It's also applicable to steep slope zones and aquatic buffer zones and on a permit removal basis. That is something that's already been required, but we've formalized through this ordinance. Another applicable scenario for this ordinance is for new commercial, multifamily, industrial, and institutional buildings, and as well as expansions that are greater than 1,500 square feet for existing buildings of that type. It's also applicable to new open uses of land, such as parking lots and sports fields, and expansions of those uses that are greater than 3,000 square feet. It is not applicable to the construction of individual single-family or two-family homes on one lot. Now that we know what this applies to, I'd like to take you through the key elements of how this ordinance works and is administered. There are 4 key things to know. We're going to be working with resource management districts, canopy classifications, canopy preservation requirements, and we've built a great deal of flexibility into this ordinance to enable people to comply easily. The first concept here are resource management districts. This is an overlay district that has been applied to the city. There are 3 of these districts, as you can see on this map in front of you. The red area is our downtown resource management district. That is the area that is familiar to most of you as downtown Asheville. The yellow you see represents our urban resource management districts. These are our more developed traditional neighborhood corridors and areas. The green represents our suburban resource management district, and those are our areas that correspond to our highest percentage of current tree canopy coverage and also have less of an urban form to their developments currently. There is an interactive map located at treemap.ashevillec.gov that will help you determine what resource management district a property lies in and also show you the current tree canopy level of that property. So the first step here is to determine what resource management district a property lies within. Then that resource management district is cross-referenced by the type of land use someone's proposing to do. This table is pulled straight from the ordinance and does show that depending on if it's a residential subdivision, multifamily and office, institutional, commercial, or industrial development, there may be different requirements for each resource management district. Once a class has been attained, there are certain tables that tell us how much tree canopy must be preserved on a site as a percentage of the site area for each class of tree canopy requirement. This table shows you the Class A requirements. And the important thing to note here is that those requirements are different if you are preserving existing tree canopy or installing new tree canopy. For instance, in Class A, you can preserve 5% of your site in canopy and meet the total requirement. Now, as you cut more or don't have more tree canopy and need to install more tree canopy, that requirement increases. So the third column you see there is simple math showing you a higher requirement with the greater percentage of new tree canopy installed. So the more you preserve, the less you have to maintain. That trend holds into Class B. And also the trend does hold into our Class C sites. The only difference with these Class C sites, which are mostly those green or suburban sites that we saw on the map a minute ago, is that this is also based on the current canopy level. If you'll remember, I did mention those suburban sites are mostly comprised of our currently most heavily forested sites in the city. So these requirements are contextual based on how much tree canopy exists currently. And again, you'll see the more canopy that is preserved, the lower the requirement to preserve canopy. This graph simply illustrates the concept of incentivizing preservation of existing tree canopy over planting new. You'll see the green bar represents the requirement to preserve tree canopy, while the blue bar represents that requirement to plant existing tree canopy. Now, how do we arrive at the number of what each tree equals as far as tree canopy square footage? Well, we use table 719.4 and table 719.5, which you see in front of you now. You'll see there are square foot credits given for trees when you're preserving on the table on the left, and then also a credit of canopy assigned for new canopy trees that are installed. The first thing you'll notice here is we do give a good deal more credit for preserved mature trees than we do for newly planted canopy trees. That again helps to incentivize the use of existing mature trees over new trees to meet the requirements. Now we'll take you through how this might work on an actual site within the city of Asheville. And the first disclaimer is we all know that a flat square site in the city is a hard thing to come by, but we're going to use that for this example. The assumptions we're going to operate off of here is that this is within the Suburban Resource Management District. The site contains 35% existing tree canopy, and the developer intends to put a commercial use here. You can see right now, the light green is your open area on the site, and the dark green is the existing tree canopy. The first scenario here is full canopy preservation. So this would be a developer meeting the requirement fully through preserving existing tree canopy. You can see that there are some trees that have been planted to meet other requirements that are in the Unified Development Ordinance, highlighted in red. And on the top right of the site, you'll see a dark green area where 15% of tree canopy has been preserved to meet that requirement. The second scenario for this site shows partial canopy preservation. So this is a mixture of planting new trees and preserving existing trees to meet the requirement. Again, highlighted in red, you'll see the trees that are required by other parts of the Unified Development Ordinance. Those trees are still required. What you get in addition with this ordinance is the preserved tree canopy on the top right and the new canopy trees that have been planted on the top left. The third scenario we run into would be no canopy preservation. This would assume that the developer has removed all the existing trees from the site and has to plant new trees to meet that requirement. Again, highlighted in red are the trees that are required by other elements of the Unified Development Ordinance. Those trees are still required. At the top of the site, you'll see several trees labeled NC for new canopy that represent what has been planted to meet the requirements of this preservation ordinance. Another way a developer could meet the requirement for tree canopy would be payment in lieu of planting. This is based on, in the tables that show canopy classifications, on the new tree canopy installation that is required and can't be based on the existing preservation numbers. But this does allow the payment of a fee to meet the requirements when the requirements are too difficult or not able to be met in another manner. There are three components of a fee in lieu determination. That's the average per square foot land cost within a resource management district. Those are our downtown, urban, or suburban districts. The average cost of tree installation broken down per square foot of tree canopy, and an administrative fee to cover the cost of administering this program. Here's an example, and this is using the numbers from our example site that we just looked at. Again, this is a 1 acre site, and you can see down below in the table the requirements for tree canopy preservation. In this case, if the developer were not to propose to preserve any trees and propose all new canopy installation, but then take that a step further and propose to pay a fee instead of installing those trees, you can see how that fee would break down for 8,712 square feet of tree canopy, with a land fee of $30,840, an administration fee of $2,178, an installation fee of $6,534 for a total fee in lieu cost of $39,552. Now, while this fee is based on objective numbers such as the land cost, it does tend to represent a very large proportion of project budgets as far as the size of a site, and it is not likely to be the option most developers gravitate to, as it will be the most expensive option for complying with the ordinance. Some details about that fee when it is paid. Those funds must be used in the resource management district where the money is collected. So if the project was in the downtown district, the funds must be used downtown, and so on. The funds must be tied directly to the installation, administration, and maintenance of the city's tree canopy. And it does give us as a city the opportunity for equitable maintenance and distribution of tree canopy based on where these funds are expended. We are offering calculation assistance for the requirements and fees to meet the requirements of this ordinance. And that's in the form of an online calculator, which can be found at ashevillec.gov/tree calculator. As staff, we've committed ourselves to an 8 to 12 month cycle for feedback on this ordinance so we can evaluate the effectiveness of it. We'd also like an opportunity to incorporate any new recommendations that come to us from the public and our Urban Forestry Commission as we move forward. Some takeaways from this lesson is that this ordinance creates a new predictable and flexible requirement to preserve, install, or pay a fee in lieu of tree canopy for many development types. It provides heavy incentives to preserving valuable existing tree canopy over planting new canopy or paying a fee, and applies requirements for shade and canopy to all developments within the city outside of 1 and 2 family residential units. Thanks for listening today. I hope this has educated you folks about this new ordinance amendment. Anyone that does have questions moving forward can email those to me, Chris Collins, at ccollins@ashevillec.gov, and I'll do my best to get you some answers. Thank you.